Hello again, Internet. We are back for Run Zero Day. I think I've done about 5,000 of these so far today, and it has been amazing every time. They go super, super fast. And we just came back from a panel of current and former journalists, but now I am joined by Joe Menn, a very current journalist. You've been a current journalist for the entire century, I want to say, so far.
That's true.
Yes, and beyond. So this is on the front lines of investigative journalism in cybersecurity, an insider's perspective. I'm going to guess that you're the insider. And so tell me, Joe, how did you get here? Like, let's. I know that you wrote Cult of the Dead Cow, the book about the Cult of the Dead Cow, entitled Cult of the Dead Cow. But like, clearly that wasn't your first rodeo. Tell me about some prior rodeos.
Well, like I'm old school. I started out in journalism as a police reporter in a small southern city.
Okay.
And worked my way up, did courts and city hall and sort of regular stuff before I started being a business reporter.
Okay.
And I had the opportunity to move to San Francisco, so I took it in 1998.
Okay.
And once I got here, I figured out all by myself that tech was probably a pretty big story. And so I started covering tech then. And it was a really weird time because it was the dot-com bubble, and everybody was hyping everything. And the hackers had a much more interesting story to tell.
Sure.
About stuff that didn't actually work, or that worked but had big risks. And so, particularly because of that overhyped atmosphere and the fact that nobody had incentive to tell the truth, that sort of pushed me on the way to covering hacking and security. And then also, I just found it more interesting because it crossed so many, beat jurisdictional lines. Like,
Mm-hmm.
It's a technology story, it's a business story, it's a crime story. It was working its way already to be a geopolitical story.
Right.
And I just find that more interesting than, somebody's got a new widget or, something that might make your, a better search engine or something like that. So I've always been kind of on that edge of technology coverage.
Okay.
Back in the day, I was with the LA Times, and then I was with the Financial Times, and I did a lot of investigative stuff on cyber for Reuters, and most recently, as you know, I was at the Washington Post for 4 years. So I've been based in San Francisco the whole time because back when I started, cyber was a Silicon Valley thing. It wasn't yet a Washington, D.C. thing.
Sure. Rather famously, the movie Hackers takes place in New York, and so I'm just kind of curious. Like, would you describe your reporting and your journalism as having a San Francisco flavor, or is it really a global thing, or was that a transition? Right?
No,
because
I've been writing sort of nationally or for a global audience from the beginning. So I don't think of it as particularly San Francisco flavored, and a lot of people think I'm somewhere else. A lot of people, I think,
really?
think I'm in Washington,
which
is where a lot of the story has moved. But no, it is an advantage in talking to the people inside the Googles and the Facebooks and the Apples of the world, and that is something that I think is a really key part of serious cybersecurity coverage, because that's kind of where the rubber meets the road. That's where the users, that's the interface the users have. And then if bad stuff happens at those companies, it impacts everybody. And they're also just really, top experts at those companies now. So that's the only San Francisco flavor I think I have.
Sure. And you said just now that like you started in crime reporting. Like that was like your first real reporter job, right?
Yep.
Because this is about like the front lines of cybersecurity journalism today, like is the hacker as a criminal story, is that like the driver for cybersecurity journalism, or is it more defense flavored, or like how should people approach like cybersecurity as a journalism topic, right? Like, is it a politics story? Is it a crime story? Is it all of these things? But like more so is the business of cybersecurity, is it as interesting as the cybersecurity as crime story?
For me personally, no.
Okay.
I'm not. I'm not that interested in earnings or company A buys company B.
Sure.
I like to know what's going on. I like the people in the industry a lot, and I really appreciate the innovation. But no, I'm not like I don't care whose stock price is up or down.
Okay.
The crime stuff. I mean, to me, the most interesting stuff is when crime overlaps with geopolitics. The subject of my
Do we just call that espionage?
No,
Okay.
no. I mean, it's. I'm thinking of Russia and other places where the organized crime groups have connections with government figures, either in the intelligence agencies, or in law enforcement, or with the Kremlin or the equivalent, and they have. This has evolved in very interesting ways during the. After the 22 invasion of Ukraine, there was sort of another call for patriotic hackers,
Right.
And crime groups went after Ukrainian targets, and in exchange, they got some more leniency from law enforcement there. It's actually super interesting. It's happening in China too. China has actually learned from the Russian model, both in sort of industrial scale criminality. And in cooperative relationships with various government sponsors or figures.
Okay. Interesting. So, are you working on anything new that you can talk about, or that's not how journalism works, I assume?
So, I left the Washington Post a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
It's part of the mass bloodletting there, where they let go 45% of the newsroom. So at least I don't take it personally.
Yeah.
And I will continue to cover this stuff because it's what I know best, and it's what people know me for. And I am thinking about another sort of day job, but I'm also thinking about another book. But it's very early stage, and I reserve the right to change my mind about what it's about. But I think there is very interesting stuff going on right now with the federal government and privacy and offensive cyber. So it's a rich field. And, I think all of this stuff is complex enough, if you do it right, that it deserves book treatment. And the trick is then to make it interesting and fun enough that people will be entertained as they learn something.
Right.
So that's the hard part, is finding like the good guys and the good women, and have like story arcs for them, so that even people who don't have a good education or in Congress are in Congress can follow along and maybe get up to speed.
So, and it's a great segue. We had an event yesterday, a book signing for you for Cult of the Dead Cow. Do you want to talk about a little bit of why you wrote this CDC book? And by CDC, for the rest of the video, means Cult of the Dead Cow, not Centers for Disease Control.
Thanks for the question. So, a really big change happened in 2003, 2004 that wasn't really headline news. It was this subtle shift from, viruses being annoying and being authored by hobbyists or tinkerers or budding hackers to mass hacking being a key element of organized criminal groups. So spammers spammers were getting their IP addresses blocked by sysadmins, and so they needed clean IPs, and so they had people hack a whole bunch of random computers and form them into botnets through which they could send spam, and later do lots of other things like denial of service attacks for extortion purposes and stuff like that. So there was hacking already was very hard to defend against because of the architecture of the internet and the fact that the Vint didn't put in security in the first place. He told me he was going to get to it. It just escaped from the lab before he got the chance.
Well, the internet is a experiment from DARPA that got out of hand.
Yeah, as many do. It's like a monster movie.
Yeah.
Only now it's all our lives. And so I started looking into the organized crime part of it. And it was fascinating. I had to learn about Russia. I didn't know anything about Russia.
Wow.
I had to learn a lot about China. in addition to the pure technological issues and the politics in the U.S. And I just thought this is a really bad problem, and it's going to get a lot worse. And sort of like, so anyway, I wrote this book called Fatal System Error,
right.
And that came out in 2010, and that was the first journalism that said Russia is in cahoots with organized criminal hackers. At the time, that was shocking at the time, and
this was shocking in 2010.
It was absolutely, and like now your gardener knows that, the bus driver knows that, everybody knows that. Certainly, Robert Mueller knows that. May he rest in peace. So that was the first book that did very well in the cyber community and sold, pretty well in the general public. That said, basically, we're all screwed. Cybersecurity is out of control, and it's going to get worse as governments invest more in this. Because there isn't a fix that works for both Russia and the U.S. and and China as well. But this is what should happen. And a friend of mine at Google described it as a public policy document disguised as a crime caper, because there was I followed these heroes who went to Russia and actually got people arrested, and
right.
They almost got killed doing it, and it's fun reading, but it's about how dire the situation is. And so the last chapter was the White House should do this, and Congress should do that, and companies should do the other. But it was all it was grim. It was we have a really big problem.
Right.
And since then, after that, there were lots of other books saying we also have a huge problem with disinformation, and we have a problem with, the way the DoD works, and right. all these other aspects of we're screwed. And so, I'm very choosy about what books I go into, because it takes me a year to write each time. But I wanted to, if there was something positive that pointed to a way forward, that was more about what we could do better, how to do it, I thought that would be more valuable to people, and welcome to people who are burned out or depressed or exhausted on the front lines of this thing. And something for the kids, something for the people that are coming into the industry,
for the kids,
not from hacking the heck out of each other and stealing credit cards to make long-distance phone calls to get into bulletin boards, but people who got degrees in the cyber things and work for nice companies in the cyber biz and do cybery things. And I wanted to painlessly tell them about some of the roots, some of the early fights over what was the right thing to do in security and what was not the right thing to do in security, because they're not going to go back and read 20 years worth of Usenet posts. So I wanted to distill
lazy.
it. Huh?
Because they're lazy.
Because I don't think that's an efficient use of time either.
No.
I mean, there's a lot of crap out there.
Okay.
So I wanted to make it a fun read about the history that kind of points a way forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and so in Cult of the Dead Cow, you kind of follow this what used to be notorious, and I would strongly argue now beloved, right? Hacking supergroup, as you call them, through basically origin through today, right? There's a new afterword, I think, in this edition.
There is.
So if you've bought it already, don't worry, Joe, you have to buy it again.
Yeah, so that's the exciting thing. It came out in 2019, and it was great. I mean, I did all kinds of speaking gigs, culminating in a panel at the main stage at DEF CON with 4 of the members of the group, a real variety, a core sample of some of the heroes there. And it's a wonderful response from the community and new people coming in as well. And then it's continued to sell well after these many years. And they asked me to update it with a new afterward, and that just came out a couple of months ago in paperback, audio, ebook. Just don't get the hardcover, beloved as it is. And I got to bring it up to date with both what the Cult of the Dead Cow is doing, what our beloved federal government is doing, the tech giants, and the sort of intense politicization of cybersecurity now. So it definitely has a different feel at the end of the book now.
Different feel as in everything's going to be okay, or oh no, we're all doomed again?
More like everybody to the barricades right now feel.
Okay. I mean, I'm with you. I'm there. I'm ready to go. not to brag, I did run a Bay Area BBS in the 80s, so I'm somewhat familiar with the space, and I am ready to rock those barricades. Much to the, I'm sure, terror of my boss, who was sitting right off screen. So, among the things that so one of the things I was struck by when I read books like this, like Cuckoo's Egg, which is I think you could not to be so, oh, you're the greatest, but it's up there, right, for me, with Cuckoo's Egg, with Hackers by Steve Levy, which was published, I want to say, in 89, maybe?
A long time ago, yeah.
Yeah. But these books, yours among them, I think are very important for our, technological literacy and technological history, and yet I don't recall seeing any questions about the Cult of the Dead Cow on my CISSP exam. So, are people today who are graduating from a cybersecurity degree program or doing a boot camp for some reason or getting certified and have been maybe drafted into a SOC analyst or something like that, are they even aware of the hacking culture beyond, the occasional mention of DEF CON every year?
So, the hacking security universe is a big one, and it's expanding in all directions forever. So certainly not everybody, not enough in my view. And it doesn't have to be painful. These are really colorful people to read about, and it's and they're fun adventures and some
They're
drugs and some sex,
right? And it's it reads like a comic book sometimes.
Yeah. And there's Mudge in the White House and the and drugs and sex and pranks and and messing with the media. I mean, it's a fun tale. But to me, the really important part is that if there's one takeaway, it's that these guys sort of leveled up. They started in the 80s as 14-year-olds running BBSs, and it was about text files and creative fiction and making fun of the more serious hackers and the more criminal ones, and that was great for the 80s. But then AOL and Microsoft put everybody online in through 95.
The eternal September. It is a term. Look it up.
And these guys leveled up.
Yeah.
Because they're whoa, so there's overlap between CDC and the Loft.
Right.
There were actually 4 people in the Loft that were also at CDC in different times. CDC, as you mentioned, is what I call a supergroup, not in the sense that they are super amazing,
the most elite hackers ever.
Right. That's not what I mean by supergroup.
Right.
What I mean is in the musical sense of the Eagles or another musical band where each member had been in another band or continued to be in another band. And so they were members of Legion of Doom and Masters of Destruction and other hacking groups that were in CDC. And CDC wasn't about criminal plots. CDC was a place to blow off steam. It was the liberal arts wing of the hacker underground.
Right.
But they had these quite talented people, and more as people wanted to be with the cool kids, more serious technical minds wanted to be with the cool kids because they were a platform back in the day, a way to reach people. So, when everybody was suddenly online, they realized, especially sort of the Loft wing, that they could take their security knowledge and help people, and maybe shame Microsoft into behaving better, because Microsoft was a monopoly and they had very little incentive to actually make their products safer for people. So they thought about their ethical role, they leveled up, and they kept doing it. They testified before Congress, and they came up with coordinated disclosure, which is the right thing to do when you have a vulnerability when it's possible. And they invented hacktivism, which is a heck of a thing to have coined.
Yeah. In the history, right, the storied history of hackery, I brought up the New York thing with hackers. The movie Hackers is very much supposed to be like a reflection of the New York hacker scene. CDC was very Texan, I think it's fair to say, right? Their CDC was they were the organizers of HoHoCon, or among the at least core speakers, right?
People with one of the members of CDC was the driving force behind HoHoCon,
right?
Which, as not everybody watching knows,
right,
was the first HackerCon that openly invited journalists and cops, rather than dealing with the cops being there undercover.
And it was called HoHoCon because it was in late December.
It was between Christmas and New Year's,
right?
When people could get off school.
But
mostly
you're here
high school.
Yes, mostly high school. Yes. You're based here in San Francisco, and the Bay Area. Weirdly, had two different hacker scenes split by the Bay. But Chicago had its own hacker scene, and so it was all very regional. Loft was very Boston-y, right? And so, where are we today with that? Because I'm curious what your thoughts are on the globalization of learning how to hack. You can learn all the kinds of things that these kids learned in the 80s today by YouTube, right?
Yep.
YouTube.com, because that is a global place. Thoughts? I mean, I know that's a terrible question.
Okay, so no, first of all, I would say that the center of gravity, and I trace this in my book, because it's sort of there's geography along with what was the cutting edge in hacking each year. So CDC, yes, it began in Lubbock, Texas, home of Buddy Holly, and then the center of gravity moved to Boston. And then it moved to San Francisco. I mean, there were people stayed in those various places. There were people in other countries, but if a plurality of CDC was first in Texas, then in Boston, and then in San Francisco, and now it is global, and you can do it in the comfort of your own living room. Something is lost there. I think one of the things that made CDC great and long-lasting is that they actually knew each other, and they hung out, and they met face-to-face. And that's one of the ways, in my view, that Anonymous fell short, is that they actually did not know each other for the most part.
They're not just anonymous from the cops and the news, but they're anonymous from each other.
Which unfortunately meant that any spy agency worth a damn had multiple people inside Anonymous.
Oh, sure.
Not only watching what they were doing, but instigating various ops to try and get them to do this or that. Much in the same way that Russia came to have an overreaching influence in WikiLeaks, which started out pretty good.
Right.
I think there's a lot of, I think human connection is very important if you're trying to do something tricky and maybe even noble.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was the mentorship that comes from being able to go over to someone's house or meet at a coffee place and actually talk it out. I think there's something to be if you have that opportunity, take it, right? If you have the opportunity to learn this kind of stuff from someone in person, I would say value that more than the YouTube University.
100%. Yeah.
Cool. Well, hey, Joe, thank you so much for coming back even to Run Zero and talking to us about hackery and Cold to Dead Cow. I'm gonna first off shake your hand, and then I'm going to tell people on LinkedIn that we are going to be switching URLs. So you're going to have to do a thing, and we're not doing that right now. We're doing it next after this one. It's going to be Patrick Gillespie and GuidePoint. After that, you're going to switch out. So be prepared. Hang over your keyboard, and that's it. We're done. We'll be back in 5 minutes.